This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions, from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Hey friends, and welcome. My name is Felice Gerwitz, and I am here today with Dr. Brian Ray, and he is affiliated with NHERI. You can find today's show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com, and we have a mouthful of a topic. It's an overview of research on adults who were homeschooled. So, Dr. Ray, I have been very familiar with your research for many, many years, but maybe my listeners have not. So share a little bit about NHERI, and that is NHERI.org, where you can find a lot of information. But just share a little bit about yourself and your family.
Thank you, Felice. So good to be here again. Thank you. So, okay, a little bit about the reason. I'm not going to spend a lot of time like we did, how did I get here?
Right.
But
we have another interview. I'll put the link on, so we'll get that one. Okay, good.
Yeah. So let's just flash back over 40 years ago, Felice.
Oh my gosh.
Some people listening were not even born yet, but
right.
I bumped into some people. I started looking into what's going on with these people who are not sending their children away to school when they turn to be 5 or 6 years old. And lo and behold, there was a reemergence of what we now call homeschooling. Okay, that was, and 40 years ago, I started a journal called Homeschool Researcher. It's still going. It's a peer-reviewed journal. 35 years ago, in 1990, some other men and I started this nonprofit research institute, National Home Education Research Institute. And I've also been a professor at a couple of college universities. And I've been doing research now on homeschooling for, I guess, watching it and doing it for over 40 years. So that's what I do research on homeschooling. We collate research, put it into a place where people can find it. We interpret it, we discuss it, we publish it, we do media interviews, all those kinds of things. In terms of our family, Betsy and I have 8 children. They're all grown up, as they say. We have now, 24, I think, grandchildren.
Wonderful.
If God tarries, if the Lord tarries, statistically, I like to do estimates. I'm guessing there'll be at least 32 grandchildren. That's just statistically, I'm guessing, but
wonderful.
Who knows? Maybe more, we'll see. And Betsy and I live on a little, like gentleman's farm outside of Salem, Oregon, in what I think before the fall of Adam and Eve would be like the Garden of Eden. It is just absolutely beautiful.
Except it's too cold. For those of us who live in the South, I think the Garden of Eden was tropical, if I remember my
Come on. Okay, just up, okay, up at 5 degrees. Okay.
All right, there we go.
But anyway, I just live and enjoy people and do research and write articles and all that kind of thing. And I like to go hunting and wander around. I like to adventure. So that's it.
Wonderful. And so I followed you for many years and have donated. And one of the things I always look for are places that I know are going to use my money well and responsibly. And your organization is one of them. And so I would highly recommend that people do it. This is me plugging you not asking for funds. But if you get on Dr. Ray's email, you will get some emails that are asking for specific funds. And what I really like that you do is you tell us what you're doing. This is where the research is going, that we need to get this peer reviewed. This is how much we need. This is how much we've raised, kind of a thing. So you kind of keep us in the loop. Yeah.
Thank you.
Rather than just throwing money at something and never knowing, did you even do what we were trying to, it's nice to get an email and going, we made our goal. And I'm like, oh yeah, my little bit towards it. But at least, even if you can only afford $5, I'm sure you would take that, right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't have
for the feedback. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah. I'm not good at marketing and PR. I'm a researcher, dude, but your little, your input like that, that's very helpful. Thank you, Felice.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to talk about homeschool success. So I'm of course, a little bit biased because I clocked out at 32 years of homeschooling my 5 children at the end. And I was always teasing my husband saying, where's my gold watch? I have a silver and kind of
Yeah.
ish goldish watch that's actually, I think only the face of it's real gold. we we won't worry about that. But anyway, he was laughing about it, going, "Yeah, 32 years," and I think I did get some flowers, so that was nice. But
Wow. Yeah.
but the appreciation more so is what you see your children accomplish. And, as parents, we are very proud. I know that that is not a good character quality to have, but I think God gave us a little bit of a wiggle room there when it comes to our children, that we are supposed to be happy for their accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's really an amazing grace. People will say, well, how did you homeschool so long? And I'll ask you the same question. But for me, there really wasn't an option. It's like, this year I'll celebrate 46 years. How have you been stayed married so long? Divorce was not an option. So it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing when you look at things as this is what you're going to do, what you feel like the Lord has called you to do. I waited quite a while to get the right one, as far as a
Mm-hmm.
husband goes. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trading this one in thinking I'm going to get somebody better.
Yeah.
But, I think that for us, it was a mission. It was something that we were passionate about. Of course, there were ups and downs. Did I ever threaten my kids that I was putting him on the bus down the road? Absolutely. and they, and so sometimes I was a threatening, repeating parent. But for us, it was a mission, and you as well. So we consider homeschooling a success, but you're going to share with us some of the stats. But for you, was this a mission from the Lord that you felt in your family that you were called to homeschool?
Mm-hmm. I think our understanding of things has matured, which I hope happens for all of us. But
Hmm.
I can go back and I think from memory, sometimes we like to whitewash our history and our memory.
Right.
But what I do remember is that once it clicked, the kind of the idea of, oh, you don't need to send them away to an institution called school. It was over for Betsy and me. It was
Hmm.
just our oldest was getting to be institutional school age. And we were thinking about it. Well, we enjoy being with her and them. By then, there were, I don't know, 3 or so born. And we're also Christians. So we're thinking, how do we look at this biblically?
Right.
And we couldn't find where we should send them away to be taught, trained, and indoctrinated by other people. We just couldn't find it, Felice. And
Hmm.
that sort of sounds simplistic, but I like to challenge people when they say, many people ask, well, how did you decide to homeschool, to us or to anybody? And my response, and I've been trying to really work this and use it the last 5 years, my response is, why did you decide to stop homeschooling? Because all of us throughout history home educate our children from birth. And some people think it's happening in the womb with sounds and music and all those things.
Right.
So why all of a sudden do millions of parents around the world, when their child hits 5 or so, say, okay, let's send them away to a place called school? Sadly, in my mind, many people are doing that at age 3. And when
Oh,
I
I
ask
know.
people, I
Yeah.
was on the plane a couple months ago with a man, successful businessman, and he has 2 businesses, one up north in Michigan or something, and one down in Texas or something. And he's kind of a thoughtful guy, and he likes history and philosophy. And I said, well, why did you stop homeschooling your children? And he looked at me, kind of his eyes kind of scrunched up. He said, that's a good question. I don't know why we stopped homeschooling. And then he said, because everybody else does. And he
And
said, thank you for asking me that question. He
yeah.
wasn't defensive. He was not defensive. He just said, wow, you don't think about it. Everybody send their kid away to school. So you send them away. So that's my long answer to
Yeah. And I
is
didn't,
no. We didn't
yeah,
have we didn't have doubts, really hardly any doubts about it.
yeah, I didn't start out because I had an education background. I was going to be a principal and change the world one kid at a time, and,
Mhm.
just totally revamp education because I had a lot of things that I thought was wrong with the educational system. And then as an unmarried woman, I taught 2 years in the system, got myself in big trouble the second year of regular school because trying to change things, there's this protocol and you can't just change things. And you want to drag a box in the hallway for a voting booth to show the kids how to vote and have them, run for office. And you need permission for that. And, just so I remember getting called into the principal's office. This is as an educator, as a teacher. And I'm like all of 23 or 24 at the time. And the principal tells me, look, Felice, I'm retiring. Stop shaking the boat. Just do what you're supposed to do. I want to retire this year and I don't want any trouble. And then the assistant principal, who I did not like very much, I like the principal because at least he was sincere. He said, well, we're keeping a file on you. And I said, oh, really? That's really cool. So that means I can keep a file on you as well? Not the right answer. So I realized at that time, did get married, and my husband said, I think you need to retire. So he retired me from that part. And then I thought I was going to put my kids in school and had a big change of heart after putting my son in for a year, I think. Well, they went to preschool. My kids did go to preschool, the first two.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lord said, it was actually a really good preschool, but, they played. They didn't do all this academic stuff. They did a lot of, anyway. So I realized quickly that this wasn't going to work for us. And I started in 1986 and didn't look back until we were done. I believe it was 2018 with Michael. So 5 kids, every one of them individuals, and I believe successful adults. And so now you're going to tell us how you decided to work on the stats on outcomes. So
yeah. Okay, so there's so many different areas of research on homeschooling, but we're focusing now on adults who are home educated.
Okay.
And one of my favorite memories is I can't remember. I need to look up the year of the article. I think it's over 25 years ago. A friend of mine, Dr. Gregory Cizik, wrote an article and published it in our journal called The Mismeasure of Homeschooling. And he said, hey, folks, these researchers are studying academic achievement, test scores, academic achievement, test scores. He said, but an awful lot of homeschool families are Christians, and they say that they're doing it for philosophical, religious, faith reasons, or non-Christians also home educate for philosophical, quote, faith reasons. In other words, they want their children to learn particular values and beliefs and a worldview. So who in the world is studying that? So in this one study, okay, let me kind of talk about some other studies. So if you just look at quantitative research and, how are the adults doing in college, or how do the home educated do on SAT or ACT tests? The simple answer is, on average, above average. Felice, they just do. On average, they do above average. Okay, whether it's GPAs in college or whether it's completion rates at college if they decide to go to college, whether it's SAT, ACT scores. By the way, the publishers of the SAT and ACT, these college admissions tests, they used to publicize how the home educated did compared to public school, private school. And I think one of them divided out Catholic schools. But anyway, they don't do it anymore. I don't know.
I wonder why.
I wonder if somebody said, well, you can't do that. It makes homeschoolers look better,
Right.
Anyway, if you look at these quantitative important measures, and I would also call them worldly measures, the home educated on average are doing better than average. Okay, and if you look at things like suicidal ideation or use of, overuse of alcohol and drugs, the home educated on average are doing better. We just keep seeing that in the research. Now, it does not mean all adults who are homeschooled are wonderful,
are perfect, right?
Pure and perfect. It doesn't mean
right.
that, but in quantitative research, you look at measures of central tendency. That's what I'm talking about. Now, back to Dr. Cizik and the mismeasure of homeschooling. So for a long time, some people were asking, and finally one group got together and they said, Brian, we need a study on, does it really make any difference in terms of transmission of values and beliefs, particularly from a Christian worldview? And so I did do a study. They funded it. it was really exciting. It was one of the first times ever that we had money to pay for what's called a representative sample. And in another podcast you and I are going to do together, help me remember to talk about that. So
Okay.
it costs
Representative
money.
sample.
Yeah,
Okay.
it costs money to do research, but we did that, and then we asked all kinds of questions. So these are, now imagine, these are adults, like 18 to 38 years of age, and we asked them their educational schooling history. So we find out how many years they were home educated, how many years they were private schooled, how many years they were public schooled, and then that's kind of like input. And we ask them things like how many children in your family, and we ask them, how often did you go to a religious service, and we asked them what kinds of values and beliefs were you being taught, and we asked them what was your relationship like with your dad and your mom. We asked a lot of questions, Felice. It was really a fun, in-depth, cool study. Now, we called it the Gen 2 or Generation 2 study, and one version of it is on our website, and it's pretty fascinating. I should send you the link, and people can look at that. We make it open, free access. In that particular study, I'm just going to give you people a few snippets from it. But so let me frame this. Imagine you're looking at the left-hand y-axis, a column, and we have these inputs like I mentioned. How often did you go to service, a religious service, and did you attend at an early age? How much were you homeschooled, private school, Christians, private independent, private Christian school, public school? What was your relationship like with your father when you're a teenager, when a mom, and you're with your mother? Okay, then the outputs, so to speak, are things like Christian orthodoxy, like basic 5 points of Christian belief. Okay, just like there is a God, right? There is a God. Jesus is real. It's a questionnaire that researchers have used long before Brian Ray. These are social science researchers, not some fancy new thing I made up.
Okay.
And then we got into behaviors as an adult. Now, of course, if you're not a Christian or you're a humanist or you're a hedonist, you say, that's not important. I don't want to hear about that. Well, okay. But a lot of the world does, even if they're not Christians, they believe in Christian behaviors like not cheating, not lying, not, quote, cheating on your wife or husband. A lot of people believe that even if they're not Christians.
Right.
So we looked at Christian behaviors. We looked at satisfaction in life as an adult. We looked at civic and community involvement as an adult. And then we also asked, how similar are your beliefs to your mom or to your dad? Okay, so again, we're all talking about adults here. Now here's the punchline. And some people don't want to hear this. The more they spent years in Christian school, there are a lot of negative symbols on this chart that people can go look at. It's kind of sad. It's like, what in the world? Negative relationship with Christian beliefs and Christian behaviors and Christian, and the one positive point they had was civic and community involvement. That's those who went to Christian school more. Those who went to private non-Christian school, a lot of negatives, like almost all negatives. That's it. Almost all negatives.
Okay.
The more years these adults had been in public school, more and more negatives, like just all negatives.
Okay.
It's hard to picture, but I'm going to send people to the link. I wish I should have talked to you about.
So what were the age of these young adults that
18 to 38 years old.
Okay.
Now,
so you had a sampling of the different ages. Okay, that's
absolutely.
Good.
And now I'm going to give you the positives. And this might be encouraging. This will hopefully be encouraging to a lot of people listening, whether people are homeschooling now or don't quit homeschooling or move back to homeschooling out of government school or private school. The more years the adults were homeschooled, the more positive is everything of that list: orthodoxy, Christian behaviors, Christian beliefs, civic and community, satisfaction in life as an adult, similar beliefs to dad, to mom. The only neutral, not bad, not good, the only neutral was civic and community involvement. Now, here's something else. And I don't want to spend too long on this because we'll have to wrap it up. But the more they attended church at an early age, and the more they attended church at an older age, like teenage years. A lot of positive correlations, all positive correlations, all
Wonderful.
positive, no negatives, all positives. And then this last one, I don't know, I'm not sure how many of us expected this, because in a way, this study is really not a homeschool research study, but it is a homeschool research study. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
we weren't just looking at home education as an input that we wanted to know, right? Now, listen to this last one. The stronger the relationship with mom in the teenage years, and the stronger the relationship with the father in the teenage years, all more positives than any of those other variables I just talked about.
Amazing.
Think about that, Felice. So what I want to say to parents right now is, if you are not doing well in your relationship with your teenager, you're not supposed to like beat yourself up. It might be your fault. I don't know. It might not be your fault. But here's what I want to encourage you. Start working on it. This is the time. This is the time, because I cannot explain all of that, but the positive, rich, good, happy relationship with the adolescent was one of the most important things we found in this entire study.
Amazing.
So it's not too late.
No.
And if your child has already grown, go back and work on it. Okay. That's what I want to say there.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things, we're not getting into the whole relationship thing, but one thing I want to just throw out there. I published a lady, the book is still in print, but it's very dated. And she had this thing called Secret Code Time, where she and her daughter, her kid needed to talk to her. She would just invoke the Secret Code Time 305, which was their area code. And so I was really fascinated by this lady at a homeschool conference, and I ended up publishing the book because my kids all talk so much. I don't know where they got that from, Dr. Ray, but they do. So I didn't need to know what they were thinking, except one of my sons, who is really quiet. And it was interesting because that technique worked, that it was a time where they could talk, and it was one of those, what the conversation that we're having stays here and so forth. But I think the biggest thing I learned from it was that as a parent, we expect respect, right? You expect your children to respect you, but we don't always respect them. We expect them to respect us first before we can respect them. And so I think that, there are so many difficulties in raising children, and they're all different. I'm sure all 8 of yours are different. All 5 of mine are different. You don't get this one size fits most when it comes to kids. But I think one of the beautiful things is that you can start at any time. You can say, look, I'm sorry that we're not doing well here, and I'm here to listen. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But
that's
amazing.
Good, yeah. And I know there's no implication here that I was a perfect dad at all. I made my boo-boos.
None of us are. Right.
Be sure to interact, be sure to communicate, be sure to take time in the car. Well, I had a basic rule. If I took turns taking my children to hardware stores and places, and I purposely kept the radio off, and so we could talk. Back in those days it was the radio, but if we had cell phones today,
I think it's the best conversations I've had were car conversations. My husband, God bless him, he was the one who would go into their rooms at night. By evening time,
that's good.
By evening time, I was wiped out. My brain could not function. I was tired. I've been with these people all day. And so he would go hang out and just sit and they say that teenagers will spill their hearts out if you can just go spend time in their rooms with them.
At night,
when you're tired. Yeah, and we just want to go to bed. So a very interesting outcome, probably not surprising to so many of us that know how important families are, which is just a little antidote. The enemy always tries to break up relationships. And so there are so many broken relationships out there. So,
could I hit another study real quick? Because Felice, you and I get to go for hours, but we don't get to. I want to touch another study, one other concept on adults. Do we have time for that?
Sure. We'll make time.
So we'll make time. Let's make time. So there's another study, and I want to say something before I forget. I do not want anybody to go away with the impression that all adults who are homeschooled are rock stars. Okay. What if all those who were home educated were simply good neighbors, love God, follow God, obeyed the civil law that's good, and raised their children and ended up, working hard and having good families and blessing their neighbors.
Right.
Wouldn't that be pretty cool?
That would be great.
They're not in jail. They're not. Okay. So I don't want everybody to think all home educated graduates have to be rock stars. Now, that's part of my segue to this other study that Cardus, C-A-R-D-U-S, is a think tank out of Canada. And recently, Albert Chang and a colleague published some results. And some people will look at it and go, well, Dr. Ray, some of that's different from what you found. Okay, well, that's because they're two different studies. And everybody needs to remember, a study is a study.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that in this other session you and I are going to do together.
We're going to talk about that.
Right? You get your little feed on your gizmo and it says, new study. If you take 500 grams of something every day, you're going to get rid of all your problems. Well, that's not how research is. It's like, it's a study. But anyway, this other study, Albert Chang, Cardus, they found some things like, well, maybe adults who are home educated, maybe they don't make as much money as others, okay? Or maybe they're not as involved in certain civic community activities, all right? But without going to all the details of their study, which is well done, all right, it's well done. I want to say this. If you go look at their study, or actually on our website, we do a summary of it, which is a lot easier.
Well, give me that link too.
I'll give you that link too. But let me do that summary of okay, I'm making notes here.
Okay.
But what is very similar, that when they looked at long-term, those who were homeschooled long-term versus those who were homeschooled medium-term or short-term, now it becomes much more like the findings from my study a dozen years ago. Now, isn't that interesting? So in other words,
interesting.
We might call it from a research perspective, what is the actual treatment? Is the treatment 1 or 2 or 3 years of homeschooling and then 7 years of public school? Or is the treatment actually home educated, most of their K through 12 years?
Okay.
When you do that, then it looks more like my findings, and you have stronger faith expression, stronger belief that there's a God, strong value of the family, strong value of the work ethic. Even if they don't make more money, they have a strong work ethic. Right. So I think it's pretty fascinating that, and I'm very glad that Dr. Albert Chang and his colleague thought of that to separate it out: long-term, medium-term, short-term.
Very good, because there was some overlapping.
Very good. Yeah. So I wanted to say that. Yeah.
I just think it's quite humorous that most people think that your success is based on how much money you make, and it's not that, is a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not what's the most important in life. And I think we all can agree on that. But there's some very successful homeschoolers out there too. Yeah. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if you could, this is opinion, this is not research. If you could sort it out and you had a really good sample and all that, I have a guess, and this is based on a lot of research that I've read, not only that I've done. On average, you would find the home educated to be more, I have a hard time with this French word, entrepreneurial than others. On average, more independent minded. On average, probably read more. There are a lot of things that are hard to measure and nobody's studied yet.
Right.
But some of that has come up in other research.
Yeah, there's a whole track of entrepreneurs out there. There really is. And, I've got a couple in the family, but, that think that way. And it's really interesting to watch. Not necessarily wanted to go to college. I had 3 that did and 2 that did not. And, they gave me valid reasons as to why, which was
Mm-hmm.
good. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
okay, to sum it up,
Hey, hey, hey.
if you can, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, just lasting impressions. Homeschooling is good and it is successful
Mm.
across the board, really. And I think if we had a room full of parents and we had a marker board up and we just started saying, okay, we're going to brainstorm, give me qualities that you think would make for a successful homeschool grad. And they could throw up all these things, and I believe that the consensus would be what your findings were. We would be
Mm-hmm.
very happy
Mm-hmm.
with those outcomes.
I think so. Typically, yes. I mean, like I said, if you have somebody who is amiable, somebody who's not suicidal, somebody who's
Right.
friendly, somebody who works hard, somebody who values relationships and values, God willing, values having a family and having children, and values learning and values, thinking about different ideas, not being intolerant. All of those things are measures of success. Yeah,
Right.
if you go to college, doing well, a decent GPA, and if you work hard and you want to, you can earn money. That is what you're going to see typically with the homeschool graduates. And I think it's also, I think we see it in the research by with Cardis, is that I'm almost sure they said for their age they have more children than the others. So you see, these are these subtle things in there
Right.
that, hey, if you're having more children and only one person's working, hey, yeah, the household might have less money. So
Right.
all those things
And
get
it's
teased out.
also, again, what is important to you. The
Yes.
three that graduated, one is a stay-at-home mom with 9 children. And, that's difficult, one income. And
Yeah.
then my fourth child is a teacher at a Christian school. And I told Dr. Ray this behind the scenes that I was going to
Mm-hmm.
be proud of her a little bit. She got Teacher
Mm-hmm.
of the Year this year. She
Mm-hmm.
teaches American and world history to high schoolers. So I think she has 10th and 11th grade. And she got Coach of the Year for her
Woo!
softball girls. I know she was. So we were teasing her about that because her husband also is a coach. So, and he was very happy that she beat him out. But the point being that um, it's I think a lot of times when you have a homeschooler that goes out and does my youngest is in the military, they tend to do above and beyond. This is what you're supposed to do, but we're going to not even purposely consciously thinking about it, do the best they can. And I think that's something that we encourage in the home. I wasn't a big test giver. I was not a big textbook. Yes, we use textbooks, loosely. My children that were college students told me I did not prepare them for multiple choice tests. I did prepare them for essays, but multiple choice tests and
Yeah.
multiple guests, as I call them.
Yes.
And what was the other thing? Maybe true or false, but it was so funny that was like their big complaint. I also did not
Yeah.
like wars. And my daughter, who's the history teacher now, she has a master's, told one of her professors that my mother skipped over World War One, two, and Vietnam. I did talk about why, but we didn't
Yeah.
delve into it,
Yeah.
and
Um,
and so, that's something that as a homeschool parent, she was interested in it. So she read extra books. And my
mhm.
brother-in-law was a college professor and high school professor. He also was West Virginia Teacher of the Year for history. And I
Mm.
may or may not have coerced him to teach a 62-hour course to homeschoolers so that he could give them the history perspective, which she loved. So I think that we can be more flexible as homeschoolers. We can gear our education of them to some of their likes and dislikes where you can't do that in a standardized school. And I think your results are wonderful. I think he's a big part of the homeschool community, and he has written some science curriculum, and so he's a friend of mine, but he goes out and he does I think he even has a talk on the success of homeschool students. And my mind just went, and I cannot remember his name the second. So I'm going to have to edit this part out. Help me. He was the first Apologia author.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Weil,
Dr.
Jay
Weil.
Weil,
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Jay
Okay.
Weil.
Let
Okay.
me start. I'm going to do this part
Oh,
again.
you made me feel better about myself. I remembered a name.
I know. Look at you. Oh gosh, every once in a while. Look, I'm going to be 70 this next year. I just turned 69, so I give myself a little bit of leeway
Uh-huh.
there. Okay. Still on this block, God has me. I don't know why. All right. So, a friend of mine, Dr. Jay Weil, has done talks on success of homeschool students that he actually had. And every once in a while, he'll post it on Facebook. One of his students that has done something phenomenal,
Mm,
by the world standards. And so
mhm.
that's really fun that, there are so many people that really care, even, in the homeschool community, those of us who have created curriculum. And you hear back from your students from time to time, and it's so much fun to
Mm.
hear that, because probably if you had done this research 30 years ago or even 40 years ago when we got started, there's not a whole lot of outcomes. People
Yep,
didn't know when we were homeschooling, is it going to
yep.
work? Are their kids getting into college? That kind of thing. And it was all new and untested, of course, for many years previous to public education. Parents did
Mm,
homeschool their children or had a tutor come in.
mhm.
And, then the Western idea of what education should look like kind of co opted it. So I think that, a lot of parents are turning to homeschooling. And I think this is encouraging, Dr. A, that, this research that you've done for parents who are working through their day each day. And sometimes you're thinking, oh my gosh, is it even worth it? So,
Yep,
even
yep.
if you've gotten a good citizen, and somebody who loves the Lord, I think that you have excelled at your job as a homeschool parent.
Yes, you have. Thank
Okay.
you. The
All right.
research,
Well,
the research keeps affirming that. So
right. So wonderful.
carry
Okay.
on, carry on.
Yes. So you can find Dr. Ray at NHERI.org, and that's NHERI.org. And I look forward to doing another session with you on testing and even encouraging homeschool kids to delve into it. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and TheVintageHomeschoolMoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.